I think I saw on your LinkedIn that initially, I think your first bachelor's was in business administration.
And before that, it was actually personal training. So when I was in college, it was everything sports, right? Like my whole identity was this football player. Like I got to make it to the NFL. I got to make it to the next level. So for me, I was like, okay, like my major, I wasn't really thinking about, the future in terms of what's the most lucrative career path to actually go down. Just hungry. Like I came into the industry super hungry. Like I said, like, and even now you have so many different streamlined processes of getting people into cybersecurity, and back then it wasn't like that. It was like, okay, like, this is what it is, and you kind of just got to find your way. Once you get a certification, find your way.
So for you, how's pay been like in that area, like in the DMV area?
Pay's been great. And for example, pay's been great. If you're like an intermediate like cybersecurity engineer, you can come to Washington D.C. and make maybe about like 140, and then obviously, as you get more advanced, it starts from there and you continue to go up 150, 160, 170, 180, past 200.
This video is being brought to you by Course Careers. What's going on, guys? If you're looking to start your IT career, then check out the IT course at Course Careers, taught by none other than the great Josh Medical. I'm pretty sure you heard of him. But we all know that it could be pretty pricey getting into IT, and this course is very affordable. And also, if you don't want to pay back those student loans like I have to, then this is the course for you. So check out the Course Careers course. My link will be in the description. Use code TEXTUAL50 in order to get $50 off of your course and get started on your IT career today. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Textual Talk Podcast, where I'm your host, esteemed. And today, guys, we have none other than Mr. Joshua Wells of CyberVault Solutions joining us today. With an unwavering passion for cybersecurity and an unwavering commitment to safeguarding businesses from digital threats, Joshua Wells is a visionary leader at the helm of CyberVault. Armed with over a decade of industry experience, Joshua's journey in the cybersecurity realm has been nothing short of extraordinary. Joshua's expertise and deep understanding of the intricate world of cyber threats led him to establish CyberVault, a groundbreaking venture dedicated to fortifying digital infrastructure of organizations worldwide. Under his dynamic leadership, CyberVault has emerged as a trusted fortress, providing robust cybersecurity solutions to clients across various industries. As a technical CEO, Joshua is driving force behind the company's cutting-edge strategies and innovative technologies. His intricate knowledge of ever-evolving cyber landscape enables him to anticipate threats, adapt swiftly, and deliver customized solutions that outsmart even the most sophisticated adversaries. Known for his relentless pursuit of excellence, Joshua fosters a culture of innovation and collaboration within CyberVault. He inspires and empowers his team of cybersecurity experts, encouraging them to push boundaries and stay one step ahead in the ongoing battle against cybercrime. So, you guys heard that. That means you're in for a treat, and I can tell you it was personally very good to talk to this young man today. So, without further ado, our guest. All right, man. So, how you feel about the Washington Commanders finally getting sold?
Man, I think it's time for change in that organization, to be honest. I'm actually a Dallas Cowboys fan, so I don't really got a lot of opinions on that. So, but I mean, in terms of it being sold, I mean, whatever can get them in the spotlight to be good again, man. Even though I'm from Washington D.C., I'm from this area. I'm a Cowboys fan, but they've been I know the Cowboys been struggling to get to the next level, and I know the Commanders definitely been struggling for the last decade or so. So for sure.
Funny that you said that. I wouldn't expect that from you. Well, then again, I would. Dallas has fans everywhere. I think people get like it's only certain franchises where Dallas doesn't have like a lot of fans at. Like for me, I hear that a lot when people like I tell them I'm from Louisiana and they'll think I like the Saints. I was like, no, the Saints were horrible when I was growing up. They did barely show them because I'm from the northern part of Louisiana, so they really barely showed them on TV back then. It used to either be San Francisco or Dallas. So in Shreveport, it's a lot of Dallas fans and it's a lot of San Francisco fans. For me, though, I'm actually a Broncos fan. I really was more so like follow Peyton Manning. So it's like when he was with the Colts, I was there. And then they said, oh, you can't like two teams. So I said, okay. and and so I just I used to actually like kind of root for them when Andrew Luck was there, just because I did kind of like Andrew Luck. I think they just didn't protect him enough. He was like, "I'm gonna get my money and get out of here." But good old, the sheriff. Broncos had a bad year last year with the coach. But I think with Sean Payton, I've been seeing Russ. Russ is like dropped some weight. Bold prediction. I'm gonna say 10-6, 11-5, maybe. Because a lot of the games they lost last year was within like a touchdown, literally. So it's not far fetched to yeah. So it's not far fetched to say that. Now for y'all, I don't know, man. I don't think y'all can do anything until Jerry Jones and them leave. Like me personally, I see the talent there, but I feel like if it's not balanced enough to where y'all throwing the ball too much, I think that's what's going to be y'all Achilles heel. I don't think y'all have to throw the ball that much. I mean, y'all still got Eagles problems. So
I mean, I'm tired of getting my hopes up every year. Everybody asks me, "Hey, man, how do you feel about the Cowboys? Are you excited?" And I'm like, "Man, I can predict. Hopefully that they actually go to the playoffs." But it's kind of like now we have all the pieces to the puzzle, but we've been here before. So we've been here before where we had DeMarco Murray or like Felix Jones or Des Bryant, Tony Romo. And I'm like, man, I'm tired of being disappointed. So for me, it's like if the Cowboys make it to the next stage, they do. If they don't, then it is what it is. Like even with the Ezekiel Elliott era, like what I mean, I know he's done now, but it's kind of like man, like we got Tony Pollard now, we got C.D. Lamb, Dak is okay. What I mean, we got a stacked defense. I think they were ranked number one, um, or top five like last year in terms of like uh yeah turnovers, like pass defense or and stuff like that. So, but we'll see, man.
I think some of them stats was fool's gold when depending on the teams they went against when they looked like very good. Fun fact for the listeners out there, I actually gave Dak a hot L in high school when we beat them in the playoffs. We beat them so we beat them so bad they thought we was going to state. We thought we was going to state too. We didn't end up going to state. It was kind of like, I mean, funny enough, it was like my school, Huntington, and his school, Howden. We were in the same division, District 1-4A. So we actually ended up losing them to them during the regular season just because play calling and crap like that. And we was like, all right, watch when we see y'all win the count. And that was how she wrote. Yeah, man. But guys, welcome back to episode 96 of the Textual Talk podcast. Where I'm your host, HD. And I appreciate everybody for just tuning in with us. If you've seen the vlog, you've seen I just got back from Splunk Conf, and I'm just back here this week to give you guys some more content. Now, today we have a great guest for us. His name is Joshua Wells. He has a lot of titles. I'm just gonna say right now he's a enterprise architect, and also he runs CyberVault Solutions. And today he's came to stop in with us to tell us about his journey and a little bit about his business. So let's give him a round of applause, please. Yo, Josh, man. So earlier we was talking about sports. We've got to bring everybody in that they can deal with. Matter of fact, if you're listening on YouTube right now, make sure you're gonna subscribe, hit the like button for the algorithm, and also if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, whatever, please make sure you subscribe and leave a review so it can help us out in the algorithm. But also for my YouTube watchers or Patreon watchers, who is your favorite football team? Drop it in the comments below. Your favorite football team will let me know a lot about you. I'm just kidding. But Josh, thank you for stopping in with us today, man. Can you just introduce yourself for us?
First and foremost, thank you so much for having me on here, Henry. It's a pleasure to be here. I love what you're doing, and as Henry mentioned, I wear a lot of different hats. Especially during the duration of my career, and up to this point. A little bit about myself is I've been in the cybersecurity industry for a little bit over 12 years. I've concentrated in various areas such as engineering, architect, compliance, endpoint protection, penetration testing, vulnerability management, policy, RMF, and you name it. I'm sure there's a few more I'm leaving off the board. But I'm immensely passionate about cybersecurity. When I first broke into this industry, I had a background in, football. I played football all through college. I've been playing since I was 6 years old. So transitioning into tech for me there was no streamlined process. But as I got in, through trial and error, through studying, through really helping myself and self development, I was able to reach the level where I'm at now as a business owner and as an enterprise architect. So I'm immensely passionate about cybersecurity. I also teach at several universities such as Michigan, Colorado, and Long Beach Poly as well. So yeah, I'm here. I'm so passionate about this field that I love helping other people transition into it. And anything that has to do with cybersecurity, I can talk for about like 10 hours. So, just want to throw that out there.
No, that's dope. Funny enough that you did say you used to play ball. I'm looking at you right now. I can't. I'm only looking at you from neck up, but I'm gonna say that you probably play like running back, maybe like safety, something along those lines.
Play running back, play kick return. Pretty much that's it. Those are my two spots, like running back and kick return. So yeah, yeah, you hit it right on the nail.
I can always guess. Like I used to do this thing. I used to do this thing all the time when I was watching football or college or whatever. I'm just guessing people heights. So like for me, I played strong safety. Sometimes I played corner. It really just depend who was calling the plays or whatever that day. So actually, doing the scrimmage, it was so funny. Luckily, they didn't go my way that day. Dude hit me with a double move, and he was wide. He was wide open. But they went to somebody else. I was like, yes. I was like, yes. They didn't come this way. But no, that's cool. Like for example, you play ball, and then one of my other episodes I'm shooting this week, he used to actually play college ball or college basketball like that. So it's just cool seeing people transition from that. And I wish I would have known that beforehand because as a person that used to play football, did you play in college as well?
Actually, several different colleges. So football for me, it was kind of like I navigated different areas, and coming out of high school, I was actually a top recruit. But I made a lot of mistakes along the way, like in college, in terms of like transferring and you know, not really being patient where I was at and stuff like that. So I actually played at several different schools for sure.
No, the reason why I brought that up is because I think one of the biggest issues that former athletes deal with is not knowing what to transition into. That some of these people were taught uh, early on in their life that their goal was they were going to be a football player or whatever, basketball, you name it, tennis, boxing. But when that didn't happen, they don't have a plan double A. I don't like to say plan B. We're just gonna say plan double A. They didn't have a plan double A, and you start to see them kind of spiral out a little bit. Depression, still trying to hold on to the dream of just maybe trying to play in these semi-pro leagues or some of these other leagues that really don't mean anything, but you're not getting paid enough money to. It's not like you're going to now. If you want to go XFL, by all means, go there. That's different. I mean, you got some visibility. They got some connections with the league. You may bounce back, even Canadian Football League. But anything outside of that, I mean, arena is cool because I've seen people bounce back from arena and get some trials and make some noise for themselves. But other than that, all these other little leagues and all those things, I personally would tell you to find something else. You can make much more money and take care of your family in other ways instead of possibly hurting yourself because that's the deal too when it comes to football. It's like do you want to put it all on the line? And that's the scary part. Like you got to really mean that. You can't. That's a collision sport right there. It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. But this isn't the Sport and Cyber podcast. I wish it was. Maybe I'm giving somebody a hint if they want to start there. I think that would be pretty cool. Or I might have a segment where I talk to transitioning athletes. I think that'd be pretty cool. So you already covered that you did play football in high school. Outside of that, I mean football in college and high school. Outside of that, what did you do academically? Like, what did you? I think I saw on your LinkedIn that initially, I think your first bachelor's was in business administration.
And before that, it was actually personal training. So when I was in college, it was everything sports, right? Like my whole identity was this football player. Like I got to make it to the NFL. I got to make it to the next level. So for me, I was like, okay, like my major, I wasn't really thinking about, the future in terms of what's the most lucrative career path to actually go down. So, I was like, personal trainer, and nothing against personal trainers because people have made a successful career out of it. But for me, it was just more of like, let me just attach myself to something that's athletic and get by and try to make it to the NFL. So for me, I wasn't really paying attention to that towards I got until I got like towards the end of my college football journey. And due to injuries and transferring, that's what kind of like reality started to set in terms of like, man, you know what, I don't think it's too late to kind of like trade off my major or transition into a different major. Maybe I have to stay in school a little bit longer, but I think down the road this may be a little bit more beneficial for me. So that's when I got started, and I got into business administration, and I learned business systems, and that transitioned me into information technology. So I would say initially that was my first technical degree that I transitioned to from there. So
I typically tell those college kids to check out over the long term the role that you're going to do. Please look into that and see what type of money you're going to make, especially just what you could possibly expect coming out of school. Too many kids are going into school and picking. I don't want to say it's wrong because you should be able to do what you love and make a living, but this is a totally different world than 20 years ago. It's not the same. Me and my guy E was talking about a certain a situation, but we were reflecting back when we were 22, 23 on what we were doing. And I was like, man, at 22, 23, I said, I think I was doing help desk making, around 40K. But I was like, that 40K at that time was close to like, and maybe like 60K in today's time. And we were just talking about how things are different. And everything just wasn't like on social media. It was just a different time where you could at least like, okay, cool. If I start out here, some people was working all their life to make 40. So those are one of the things why I picked, the majors that I chose to pick and go into. In college, did you do any internships? Like when it came to, okay, boom, you got business administration. Now you want to go into IT. Once you made the switch to IT, were you afforded to do any internships in school or what?
So for me, I didn't do any internships. Like I did do work study at school. So I did the help desk at several universities. Like I worked, I helped out. Sometimes it was unpaid, and I just volunteered because at that point I was like, look, I got to transition, and I got to get started somewhere. At that point I wasn't 100% invested, but I was still, working towards like really trying to build a lucrative career. Like since it was like the end of my college career, and yeah, even getting out, I didn't do any immediate immediate excuse me internships at the moment. But what I did is I did a ton of contract jobs. I did a ton of temp jobs. So let's just say, for example, you have temp agencies out there that may need cybersecurity specialists or cybersecurity analysts. And then from there, I reached out to temp agencies. Hey, this is only 2 or 3 days. Hey, this is only a week. You know what? Let me go ahead and get this experience though. And then from there, that's when I started to build up my portfolio, right? Because who wants to take, temp jobs for maybe like a week or, a couple of days or whatever, And it kind of built up to like a month and then into a couple months, into a year, into a full time position. And that's how I kind of transitioned into cybersecurity from there. So starting off as a business analyst and then help desk analyst, and then really just transitioning into security analyst. And from there, it blossomed, and that's all she wrote. Um, but I didn't take on 100% internship, I would say, directly after college like that.
Okay, no doubt. That's actually a pretty smart way. Some people wouldn't be willing to go that route, but that is one of the easier ways to get experience is through, a contracted company, temp agency, like you said. Because hey, a lot of times, like on the entry level role, 0 to 2 years experience, right? But once it's paid experience, or I actually have a document I found on LinkedIn where it's saying, some companies don't even specify it being paid experience. So with that being said, it's many different ways to skin a cat, and you just name one, and that's probably why I couldn't pinpoint exactly where your starting point was. You're like, y'all, I went on his page, no lie, he had like 20 jobs on there. And I was like, I don't know where to start. I just tried to pinpoint different areas. But before we get out the topic of school, I briefly want to talk about that now. I believe you're back in school now at Capital, if I'm not correct. I mean, if I'm not wrong, right? Yeah, and you're in the PhD program. And I want to talk about, I've been seeing like some of my associates like in this sector wanting to go back to school and get PhDs. And I got my master's and I'm just over school. I'm not over it in a sense that I wouldn't do it. I'm just over it in the sense that I don't think I had the time to. I would probably only do it if I didn't have to pay for it, right? Because I already got to pay these people back starting next month. Well, That's what they hope they get. But what decision was it for you to do a PhD? Was it the fact so you could be teaching college students, or it just some people just like the prestige of saying I'm Doctor, I'm Doctor Wells. Like, what about the PhD intrigued you to go back into it? Because I could tell you, I know it's not really the money. Like, there are people that don't have PhDs in cyber. There are a lot of people don't have degrees in cybersecurity or tech for that in general and making a lot of money. So it's not really the money. Like, what made you want to do it?
I would say it's a mix of things. I would say the first part is and I'm with you. Like school, I'm like over school, man. I'm like, you know what? I got my master's. I'm like, man, let me I'm done, right? And for me it was just more of about the credibility piece and more of like just having that additional badge and honor on my profile. So, even it being an established business, you know what I mean, having that next to my name, just shows more credibility. And I feel like and I always tell people too, at the same time, a lot of times when you're in cybersecurity and you're throwing out your resume and you're conversing with different recruiters, it's all about advertisement. How are you advertising yourself, right? You can advertise yourself with certs, you can advertise yourself with education, but I mean, what it really boils down to is can you do the job and can you execute at a high level? But I'm a big person on image. I'm a big person on visibility, and I like to advertise myself as such. So I would say it's a mix of things in terms of like, like, all right, that's Joshua Wells, the, cybersecurity architect and business owner. He has his PhD. And I want to show that I went through the necessary channels and that this isn't just like some gimmick or like me faking it till I make it, right? I've literally went through trial and error to get to the point of where I'm at, and that's pretty much just like a badge of honor. And it's like I beat the game at that point. It's kind of like certifications in cybersecurity. The CISP is considered the highest level, and once you get that, you like, okay, like I'm good, like So I feel like for me, it was more of like just taking on that challenge, of just getting that and just really adding more credibility to my name. And even addition to that, when I first started out, I was like, man, this is super functional because we only meet once a week. You get your assignments turned in once a week. I don't think it's like the traditional PhDs where you gotta go and you're working 5 days a week. They understand that they're working individuals, attending these institutions, and like they really create the structure of the classes and courses to really accommodate like your everyday life. So that's what I like about it. But I mean, overall, it's a mix of things, but I think, anything that can help benefit me and my business and push me forward, and help advertise my services or just me as a brand, I'm definitely going to take initiative and do it. So,
Smart move. Smart move. Now, we talked about the temp agencies and all those different jobs that kind of led into your experience. Let's talk about that first big time role that you had. It don't really have to be big time like certain companies, but the role that you probably would consider your official start. Like, just like yourself, when I was in college, I worked at the help desk for the College of Business for the IT director. Just and that's they used to be on my resume for years because I counted it as experience. I got paid for it, whether it was work study or a student worker job. So, but after that, my first big job was help desk. For you, after those different temp jobs, what was your first job that you actually did where say this is really the beginning of my career, a job I can really speak to in interviews and put on my resume and say I did this, this, and this. What job was that?
I would definitely say dating back to maybe like 2014 or 2015. It may be one of those years, but I had a contract. I actually got hired on a contract on the State Department, so that was pretty much my first introductory gig, full time position. I'm going in. I'm like, man, I'm a security analyst, so it was no more like help desk stuff. Even though help desk has like certain characteristics and responsibilities of like cybersecurity, I know that's a whole nother discussion in terms of like the parallels, but that was my first on paper like security job. It was I think the name of the title was a security data analyst, and what I would do was assess specific data classification types, run scans on systems, and from there I was like, man, I'm working with the big dogs now. I mean, I'm in here. From here, sky's the limit. So I think that was the introductory cybersecurity like a job for me, and I was excited there. I had to go. This was back when we weren't teleworking and working from home. 5 days a week. So I had to actually go into the office. I was conversing with people, shadowing like the senior guys, just hungry. Like I came into the industry super hungry. Like I said, like, and even now you have so many different streamlined processes of getting people into cybersecurity. And back then it wasn't like that. It was like, okay, like, this is what it is, and you kind of just got to find your way. Once you get a certification, find your way. Even before the certification, find your way. Like whether that's the help desk route, whether that's internships, whether that's contracts, or whether that's just knowing somebody, it's through trial and error. But I would say that was definitely my biggest introductory gig right there that made me most excited to kind of continue to build off of it.
I definitely would agree with that 100%. There was no real roadmap back then. It was most people you probably ran into started off at help desk and just landed a security job. Back then, security wasn't even a focus of many companies. Let alone you talking about statewide. Like, how was it working at the state? Is it similar to government as far as like technology's old, processes are old, people are old ways of thinking? This is how we do it. It's not changing. How was that experience?
My gosh, man, you hit it on the nail. I mean, I feel like the government is still like that today when it comes to like technology. Like, they're always behind. Like, for example, I've worked in the private sector, and, I've worked with different government entities, like on contracts and stuff. And it's night and day. When you work in a commercial space, oh, that's a new security tool in the market. Okay, boom, let's get it. You know what I mean? Let's invest in it. Microsoft had a release on a new patch or something like that, or there's a new, just anything. I'm trying to think of some security tools off the top of my head. For example, Carbon Black or CrowdStrike, right? Those are two technologies I've worked with in the commercial space, and it's just like, man, this is powerful, right? The federal government probably wouldn't even do that. Like, it would take them a while to invest or really, inherit a tool like that because they're used to, working with what they're working with. I mean, they have their own budget.
What they using? What they using? EPO?
You said what?
What they using? EPO?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. Yep, yep. And they'll use, for example, like McAfee too, right? So instead of like using a Bitdefender enterprise suite, they'll use McAfee, right? So it's really just meeting the minimum requirements there. And spreadsheets, they are big on spreadsheets, man. They will maintain everything inside of a spreadsheet. So to your point, it's night and day.
Yeah. No, but I was saying like so McAfee is well, I don't think it actually exists anymore because they kind of merged with Trellix,
Right.
but McAfee is a EPO.
Oh,
So
gotcha,
it's
gotcha, gotcha,
them.
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah. EPO was McAfee. They had Nitro at one time. They got their firewalls. They got some other stuff.
Yeah.
They really did have a lot of those contracts on lock back when they were prosperous, but I believe they stayed very stagnant, even from just the UI and how things look. And that's how they went down. Because I was at SplunkConf real quick. Is I met a guy who used to work at McAfee as well, and we were just talking about what happened with all the layoffs, and he was talking about the stuff he used to do there. I think he was like working for their SIM tool at the time, and I was like a SOC analyst internally to McAfee. And we just talking about like all the BS and the stuff that was happening. The writing kind of was on the wall when you kind of look back at it now. Like that office, they had a nice campus in Plano, Texas that pretty much does not exist anymore. It's been for rent for a while. Like it was just crazy. Like once they separated from Intel, like it went downhill. Intel probably was holding them together because Intel had their own SOC that was like outsourced. But this isn't the McAfee Intel tirade. I may go on another one of those again because I have an episode about the worst SOC ever that I made years ago. Let me see. Yeah. So when you did that state gig, were you still in the DMV area?
Yeah, I was in the DMV area. I'm originally from Alexandria, Virginia. So at the time I lived in Arlington. Boom, got on the metro, going back and forth, and then pretty much from there just stayed in the DC area and transitioned to different like jobs from there. So
Yeah, man. I feel like I feel like well, I can't say it for the men. The men are different, but for the women, I know who works in DC, man, or the top women, because you would think like I met these women at SplunkConf and I got to see their IGs. I was like, if you didn't know they had like security type of roles or tech related roles, you would think they were doing something else. You would think they're like some IG models or something. like, like the women in DC is really they really about their bag, man. So I know the fellas got to be about it too, but the women they are really stepping up there. It's crazy, but it's also super expensive up there. I think at this point, DC expects people to have like multiple gigs, and I think companies everywhere should really do the same. It's like don't penalize somebody for trying to make ends meet themselves or trying to put themselves in a better position. So, but that was just a little tidbit to talk about, like kind of like a little bit about the DMV area. I wanted to also talk about you being in the DMV area with government roles. Like if you want to get a government role, it seems like DMV area. That's where it's at. How is how has that been for you after you did that first state gig? Like was it on and on to keep on doing like the government roles or what? This video is sponsored by Textual Consulting. My name is Henry Davis, and I run Textual Consulting. I use my 10 years of experience in IT and cybersecurity in order to help you reach your career goals. So if you're once like me, trying endlessly to get into cybersecurity, but you're having no luck, then you should check me out. I've helped plenty of people get into cybersecurity. I've helped people with no experience, people with mid-level experience, even senior level people. I've helped all type of people. And my approach is simple. If you watch some of my videos, I show you how to brand yourself, how to job search, how to kill your interview, and most of all, we work on those transferable skills that you have gained in other jobs, and we bring them to the cyberspace. Trust me, there are a lot of skills that you have that you may not be aware of that will be useful to you in this career choice. So if that's you, check us out, book a consultation. Also have financing available for those of you who cannot afford to pay one lump sum. And yeah, like I always say, I'm ready to help you guys, and let's stay textual, and we are out.
Yeah, I dabbled and dabbled in different areas. Like for example, like I will go work on another contract, or I just work on a with a private company in terms of like doing cybersecurity there. But the thing is about DMV, it's kind of like, when you're on a train somewhere or whether you're like out to eat at a restaurant, it's almost like weird if somebody says they're not a government contractor, right? It's like, I do government contracting, whether it's like in a different area than cybersecurity, whether it's like finance or whether they own some specific contract. It's weird to not do government contracting over here, so when you talk to people and you're like, yeah man, I do roofing or something like that, or I'm an architect at this company and blah blah blah, or hey, I work at Google. It's just like, oh man, that's different, because everybody's in the government contracting space or has been at some point in their career, which is like really really fascinating, but I mean, it's limitless opportunities here, and that's where the government contracts come from. So
Right. Yeah, I've heard this. I heard it's a little bit superficial out there too, as
that
far as
too,
like if you
yeah.
don't have a certain title, certain type of job, they're gonna look at you funny. Like I've heard that as well, and
100%.
I've heard that's reasons why some people have wanted to just leave the area because it's like I'm over like all the superficial
Oh,
stuff
for sure.
of that
For
part
sure.
of
It's a different
and
culture.
that's
It's a different culture. It's like you know, every city got its different culture, or like when you go to, let's just say, California and stuff, they're like really really laid back. My cousin actually lives there, so when I went, I'm like, man, this is a culture shock. But when you're in DC, everybody's like, really really just focused and like really really a little bit uptight. But when you meet certain people, it's like, man, all right, like this guy's dope, this girl's dope. You know what I mean? And they're really, kind of just more open. But when you go to New York City, everybody's about their business. You know what I mean? It's like hustle and bustle. So I would compare this more to like New York City opposed to like any other state, like in the US in terms of like culture.
yeah, I agree. I think I mean it is what it is. I think people just gotta gotta play the game. That's how I tell people. No Triple H. Now, I did have a question on here that I wanted to ask, and you can talk about this at a high level or you can get specific. So, for you, how's pay been like in that area, like in the DMV area? And also, is it pretty much understood that you need to have a clearance in order to get paid as well?
Good question. Good question. I would say, hmm, pay's been great. And for example, pay's been great. And let me give you an example. If you're like an intermediate like cybersecurity engineer, you can come to Washington D.C. and make maybe about like 140. Um, And then obviously, as you get more advanced, it starts from there and you continue to go up 150, 160, 170, 180, past 200, and etc. And I feel like, with from at a on a global level too, as hacks continue to happen and exploits start continue to happen and stuff like that. I feel like the salaries are just going to continue to increase, and it's crazy because sometimes I'll go on Indeed, right? I'm like, man, like these jobs, like the salaries are starting to increase again, and it's like slowly increases and increases year by year, or based off of, I guess, whatever contract they're actually calling for. So I would say the pay is really, really well, and it's just going to continue to increase as like more cyber attacks start to happen and continue to happen at the same time. So
Yeah, and I'm actually glad that you brought that point up. All right, listeners, another gem. Do two things. One, if you want to see if you're being underpaid or not, go check out Indeed, LinkedIn, Dice, other sites, and just see what they're trying to offer. It's gonna be one thing that lets you know if you're getting underpaid. Two, if you want to keep on getting paid, never stop interviewing. I don't care if you just got the job last week. Interview. It's going to keep you fresh. It's going to help you know what skills are in demand so you can learn those on your own. And whenever you're ready to bounce or maybe move around your company, you'll be good. Those are two things that can always help you stay ahead of the game. Because a lot of times people get comfortable, get a job, they ain't interviewed in like 2, 3 years and possibly get laid off. And now your interview skills are trash for a while because you hadn't interviewed in a while. It happens to everybody. It happened to me. Like last year, a couple of interviews kind of a little rough. It wasn't bad, but they weren't as good as I could be. So never stop interviewing. Just apply to apply. The worst thing they could do is say, sorry, after further consideration, we can go somewhere else. But hey, that's life. Everybody don't get every job they apply to. Trust me. But so earlier on, we talked about being an enterprise architect. Would you consider that to be your niche in cybersecurity, or what would you consider to be like your strongest point, or like the typical positions that you go after when it comes to getting a cybersecurity related job?
no, that's a great question because I feel like, I've been in various positions like endpoint protection engineer. I worked in compliance. I worked as an analyst. Vulnerability management was like a big one I worked in for a long, long time. But I feel like I have a holistic view. I have a very detailed view, but I also have a overall holistic view of cybersecurity and how to actually secure networks. And I think that's where the architectural background comes in. Like, you know what I mean? For whether it's a CASB solution, VPN, endpoint protection. What type of security tools do we need to leverage? Where do we need them at? What operating systems that we need? What are the vulnerabilities? In terms of compliance, what frameworks do we need to follow? So that's just the overall, high level, overarching like architectural look on cybersecurity, like from an infrastructure standpoint. So I would say right now that's definitely my niche in terms of like, all right, somebody needs to come in, take a look at our infrastructure, what security tools do we need to implement, what processes, personnel, etc. So really just mapping the pieces together so they actually flow together. So
That's cool, and that's why my next question is actually because you said some good acronyms in there, but I kind of want you to possibly talk about them a little bit for the audience. So I was going to ask you this: what is an enterprise architect, and what do they do? What type of skill sets would you need to be an enterprise architect? Because the funny thing is, a lot of times when you hear architect, some people probably automatically go to being super technical, which you have architects that are technical, but architect is I would say, I'll let you say it more in your words, but what I think of it is like more so the planner. They're not necessarily the executioner because they're just putting things in place. Like when the architect is drawing the blueprints of a building, they have to scope it out, get all the dimensions right, draw it out. They got to be very detailed in everything they do. But after that, it's not on them anymore. They'll probably come through and just see if the plans are going to change, but they're kind of removed from that. They know, hey, we need this contractor, we need to get this, and this. So similar to what you're saying on the network side, but I will let you, in your own words, kind of talk about that, and then some of those acronyms you talked about, so we could maybe the viewers could say, "Oh, I already know some of this stuff," and they could probably transition to something else as well.
absolutely. And I think in the simplest form where I can put it is kind of like if you have an antivirus solution, if you have a VPN, um, what's another if you have a specific hashing tool, right? Where are they being placed at? You need antiviruses on every computer. That's standard. You need to manage your Windows updates. That's standard. Regardless of what framework or methodology you're actually like utilizing. And just really putting those together, you're looking at it from a holistic view on these 10 computers from a security standpoint. How can we secure these devices? Where do these devices actually need to sit, right? So if you're just coming into cybersecurity, and I always say everybody practices cybersecurity because it's a lifestyle. Everybody updates their phone, or they get forced to update their phone at some point. Yep, lock phone. Exactly. Two-factor authentication, all of that. So all of those are best practices that you're implementing and you're practicing on a daily basis. And taking that into consideration from an architectural standpoint, that's all you're doing. You're breaking down this device and you're figuring out how you can actually secure it, right? So if I would have, let's just say a kid coming out of college and I just place a laptop right in front of them. If I ask them, hey, what are 5 ways you can actually secure this device, right? He would probably give me some best practices or he'll give me some recommendations, and then from there let's take it a step further, right? Where does this actually need to go in the network, right? And even on a higher level, what processes involved do we need to do to make sure that all these devices are secure, and the personnel are actually adhering to these policies. So at every step you're really just identifying what are the weak points and you're really trying to harden them, whether it's process driven, whether it's vulnerability related, whether it's like hardening your operating systems, because security tools are good, but they're only as good as your processes and the personnel that are actually adhering to them. So for me coming in, I'm putting everything together. It's like putting all the glue together. So you may have a piece right here, you may have a piece right there, piece right here, piece right here. So I'm literally just putting the puzzle together from an architectural standpoint and really just getting, other departments to come in and adhere to them. So for example, I would say SOC 2. If I'm coming in and I need to do a SOC 2 audit, or if I'm coming in and I need to, help organization do a self assessment on zero trust, which I'm, really, really well versed and comfortable in at the same time, what security tools are we working with? What are our processes? What are our weak points? So the first step is actually doing a full assessment of what we have in house. We have these security tools, we have these processes, we have this personnel, right? And from there, it's kind of like if we need to increase the budget, we could, but let's work with what we already have prior to actually spending all this money and getting all these resources. And I know you probably know too, Henry, in terms of like so many different companies they may spend millions of dollars on security tools, and it's just like a lot of them are actually redundant. So I've been a part of an organization that had Bitdefender, and then they had malware bites, and I'm like, okay, this is a little bit conflicting. So really just assessing what you have in house and really identifying those gaps and moving along from it. So that's kind of like the simplest form how to break down like the cybersecurity architect. And for each agency is different, but from my experience, this is how it's been. So
Yeah, man, you said a lot, especially that last part
I know
saying
that was a
we
lot.
can. No, 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 no. I'm saying it's good, but
Yeah.
I'm saying the fact that you brought up about people thinking just spending money is fixing the problem, and it's not. A lot of times, there's some simple things that fix the issue.
Yep.
A lot of times, and I was talking to this with a friend and other people, let's say somebody in charge want to get a new tool, they'll just pitch it to the higher ups and say, "Oh yeah, we got SOAR. SOAR can do all this X, Y, and Z." Just to tell them they got SOAR to make it seem like they're doing something. The whole time, you probably don't even get enough volume to even need SOAR at the moment. You're paying money for a license you don't use. The thing that your sim could do a lot of functionality that you're doing, and you're wasting resources on that. So what you said is very true, because they'll spend all their money on that. And then if you need more people, you probably don't get more people because, oh well, we're over budget. Well, hey, y'all overspent. Y'all have Cofins, Proofpoint, 0365 logs. DLP. We have all these different solutions, but they're not implemented correctly. So nah, that's right. So I hope you guys really like took y'all pen and paper out and wrote that down, because that's key. And also being a person that's done that before, whether my position, your position, anybody, when you go on interviews like that and you always ask, hey, what are some of your pain points or what's going on? When you give them solutions like that, where you can give them solutions to what they're doing, most of the time you probably hired. I tell people all the time, like my clients, when you go on the interviews, Let's be solution oriented. Let's try to solve problems in the interview. That's gonna make you stick out versus just answering the question.
100%. 100%. I think you hit it on the nail too, Henry, in terms of like, because I feel like a majority, if not all, the security issues that exist in organizations is due to broken processes. You come in, you got one person doing 15 jobs, or you come in, you don't have no process of how to actually work the tool, or, any detection in terms of how we, how we, how are we actually getting the most out of this tool, right? So I think it all just boils down to broken processes in terms of why a lot of organizations face, a lot of difficulties when it comes to cybersecurity.
Let's do this. You did mention, I know you mentioned SOC 2, and I think you also brought up a risk assessment. What would be I guess we say top three, top five, maybe security frameworks that our listeners should know about? Because I typically try to guide people into more GRC based type of roles early on because the barrier to entry is a little lower. A lot of people don't know about it. It's not as sexy as some of the other titles, but it's probably one of the more critical ones because you need it. You got to be compliant. Like keeps the money coming in, keeps you from getting fined, all those things. Even the things that we do in security operations and IR is based on different frameworks, based on what they said we need for alerting and logging. So, from your expertise, what would be the top frameworks that they should know about?
From my expertise, I would definitely say one of the most recent ones out, I think I mentioned it earlier, is Zero Trust. And OMB is actually mandating that by the end of 2024. So a lot of organizations are like scrubbing to get in compliant, and it's very new. It's very new. I closely follow CISA's guidelines in terms of Zero Trust. So I think they last time I checked, I think they have three different tiers, which is traditional, optimal, and advanced of how you're actually going to implement those solutions. So leveraging different technologies and processes, you can use one of those models. But I would definitely say Zero Trust is a new one, and it's hot right now. Everybody's trying to implement it. Especially working from home. Everybody's trying to um, trust but verify. They're trying to make sure that everybody has access to resources, but validate and successfully authenticate to that network. Number two, I would say NIST. NIST is always going to be big in federal government. Specifically, NIST 853A deals with like privacy controls. So if you're looking to get into cybersecurity, I mean that's definitely a big one, and that's never going to go anywhere. They're just going to add new publications towards it, and there's a lot of security tools associated with that, such as Stig Viewer, SCAP. NEST is associated with it too. So just learning those three skills and those three security tools could take you a long, long way. And I would say lastly, SOC 2. SOC 2, it's an operational framework, and I think that's a big one out there too for a lot of organizations to adhere and to comply with at the same time. So I would say those are definitely my top three frameworks for whether you're looking to break in or whether your organization looking to be in compliant and abide by those guidelines.
That's cool. We always see those on the job descriptions as well. That's another way I use for clients that they want to look into. Okay, we're going to look at 4 or 5 GRC type roles, and we're going to see what frameworks pop up. These are the frameworks you should know and learn a little bit about. Maybe if you just learn about one very in detail, that's good enough because sometimes they might just need an expert on this. Maybe they need an expert on, we'll go into some health stuff like HIPAA or high trust or whatever they got, PCI DSS. You could niche down into something. You ain't got to know everything. I mean, over time, a career, you'll probably get introduced to everything. But if you're just good at one, that's good enough at the moment because some people aren't good at anything. So here's this next set of questions I thought were pretty cool. So you are right now, currently, I saw on your LinkedIn that you are teaching DFIR at Michigan. I wanted to ask you a question from your experience. What things are you learning from your students? As far as what type of gaps are you seeing from what students think it's supposed to be based on the jobs that they want to do or this major they want to do versus how it really is? I think that was one of those misconceptions that they run into as well. I'm of the belief most of the time, because sometimes you have people in college that did the job and they're teaching them, but most of the time they aren't being the school budget doesn't allow for them to actually get taught the information to where they get access to these tools and get taught the things that they would need to do for a job they want to land. So when they graduate, they have experience with all these different things, right? I think that's the way it should actually be done. Sometimes they're teaching them some outdated things that doesn't benefit them. So, from what's been your experience with this, as far as students, material, or I guess maybe you're coming up with the curriculum, how's that? How's this process been for you?
It's definitely been very enjoyable and very like eye opening at the same time. And I say that because my approach is really unique, right? So when I talk to students, I want them to see like how I want to position them in a way of easy success, if that makes sense. And I want to tell my story in terms of, look, this is not just a guy that just easily transitioned into cybersecurity. It's like, look, I come from a sports background. I didn't always have the resources to learn this, but through trial and error, I was able to do that. And from using my story and using my trial and error, I try to seamlessly, make that experience more easier for them. And taking a unique approach, I feel like what they're really looking for is somebody that's relatable and somebody that's personable. I know no shade to other professors and stuff, but you can see kind of get a feel of the students being in the class. They're yawning, and you got to also pay attention to their attention span, right? Like they can't just stare at the screen for like 3 and 4 hours and going over numbers and scans and data and etc. Right? You got to really capture their attention and really just cut to the chase. I feel like cutting to the chase in terms of like, look, these are the security tools you need to know. You need to be well spoken. You know what I mean? As you mentioned earlier, always stay sharp on top of your interview skills, and really just cutting into the chase in terms of what they actually need to learn. Not That's not saying that I'm hiding any courses or lessons behind it, but it's more of just like, look, this is what you need to know. Let's get you there, and the other stuff is actually going to come, but let's get you from point A to point B so you can get started, right? So for example, nessus, I know I mentioned nessus earlier, I know I mentioned scap earlier, stigs earlier. Learning those industry tools immediately, learning those acronyms immediately, learning how to conduct yourself, learning your image, I mean, how to approach an interview, what questions to ask at the end of an interview, how to market yourself accordingly on LinkedIn, advertisement. Those are the things that are really, really important. Um, and again, not saying that course content and the other professors aren't providing value, but these kids, they really, really are looking for that. They're looking for that relatability, and they're looking to get from point A to point B as soon as possible. So
Yeah, yeah. I think the soonest possible is the issue for most of them. To be honest, we can correlate that to driving. A lot of people getting a lot of wrecks because they moving too fast. Y'all listening? A lot of y'all getting into a lot of wrecks because y'all are moving too fast. If you go the speed limit, you'll get there in good enough time. So I hope I woke them up with that one because that's what I see from a lot of them. They want to. They don't want to have a Corolla. They want to have the range. So they want to start off with the range, and then they want to drive super fast to downtown. That's not typically how it works. So if y'all,
I mean, as you mentioned earlier, Henry, like in terms of even you coaching as well, it's kind of like universities have a different style, and I noticed that they have like almost a default style of like teaching. Like all the professors, they're very by the book, and it's no problem to be by the book, but I think that's what makes us special is because we're able to incorporate our personal experiences and give them like on the job experiences and scenarios and provide that value in that area. So, and yeah.
I think, like you said, relatability is a big one. A lot of the time, sometimes instructors are out of touch, and it's not really conducive to a lot of people's learning styles. I think that's why you also see the rise of courses. A lot of the courses now are being put out at a better clip, and they're a little bit more digestible than. Let's face it, a lot of people don't read anymore. So I mean, it's good. Like I have some books that I'll go back through and read through from time to time, but for the most part, people don't read books. For the most part, people do not know how to know their audience, which is a big soft skill that I talk about in my Advanced Your Cybersecurity Career LinkedIn Learning course. Knowing your audience is critical. You may have some people, you may be trying to talk to people on a PhD level in a bachelor's level class, and sometimes that doesn't translate well. For me, I know who my audience is. I know how to reach them. I know how not to just bore them to death. Like even in our conversation right now, there are different things that I'm doing to make sure this thing stays engaging, but also not to be to the point where it sounds like they're listening to a lecture. Those are the things. Like it was like a couple of live streams ago. I gave them a simple definition of like how to visually picture the dark web, and I brought up the episode. I mean, what a scene on Lion King where Simba was asking about, what's that out there, and how his dad said, "Hey, everything the light touches." I said, "Hey, that's just the regular internet. Everything the light don't touch is the dark web. Never go there." So it's super simple, but yet effective. When somebody visualize that, it's like, oh, I remember that. He told Simba don't go there because when Simba went there, he almost died. Now you're not gonna die if you go to the dark web, but if you don't know what you're doing, I'll just keep it at that. Right. But moving along for that, thanks for that good breakdown of school. Let's talk about, let's spend a little bit of time talking about Cyber Vault Solutions. What made you want to start that? How business is going? What type of services that you offer?
Yeah, yeah, no. As far as Cyber Vault Solutions, I've been, as I mentioned, I've been in the industry for quite some time, and we all at a certain point when we accumulate all this knowledge, we're like, man, like there's always that thought in terms of like, man, what if I were to do this on my own, or I see a better way of doing it. And as entrepreneurs, I know we think like that in terms of like, man, like, okay, I can do this, or I finally accumulated enough information to go on by myself and really kind of revamp something, or really just you know create something out of thin air. And that was kind of my starting point. I'm like, man, I've been in the game for a while. It's time to go out on my own. I want to really start to create something. And number one, create that freedom path that I'm sure all the listeners are here at some point want to get to. Create that freedom path in terms of like financial freedom and just building something on your own. So starting that, we've reached some early success in terms of like past performance, and we're currently growing at the moment. Um, but initially that's what got me started, and for me it's always been a passion behind it. I really believe, and I've always believed that the money will come and follow the passion, as long as you're driven towards that goal. So for me, that's how I got started. And we provide a plethora of different cybersecurity services such as vulnerability management, engineering, penetration testing, cybersecurity training, and much more. Pretty much everything under the cybersecurity umbrella. And business is going good. It's constantly growing. But that's the challenges too as an entrepreneur. It's like sometimes business is great, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's like, ah, man, I ain't trying to do this today. And then you got to really just be self-disciplined to continue going and get yourself back up again. But it's been good. We are working with several different contractors at the moment. We are also in the school systems, as I mentioned, working with Michigan University. So I do that as an independent contractor myself through my company. But it's really, really enjoyable experience, and I'm so glad that I took on this venture to actually create something and really just, compete with others on this market. Because as you mentioned earlier, the government contracting market is wide open. So that's a little bit about that for sure.
Yeah, man. Also for the listeners, and how do they apply? Like, what if they want to work for you? Like, how's that process go? Are you guys hiring anybody right now?
At the moment, yeah, we are hiring a few interns. So if you're, I think right now we're hiring for like a sales intern, two sales intern. And if you're a cybersecurity analyst and you want to intern with us, go ahead and reach me at www.cybervaultsolutions, cybervault, excuse me, dash solutions.com, and you should be able to find us on there to actually submit your resume and tap in with us. So for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I remember I typed in Cyber Solutions and another page came up. And I was like, nah, that's not that page. And then,
It's the dash.
but
The
I
dash
found
probably did
y'all.
it.
I found y'all. That's cool, man. I wanted to ask you, I guess, being that you came from a different background, I think it's cool because I think there will be people, who are former athletes that are watching this that, want to get in. They don't even have to be cybersecurity. It could be anything. And the way that you show them, I think they'll identify with you too. We got things like now the transfer portal with all the athletes there transferring every chance they get. Coach Prime with the Colorado say, "Hey, I come in, I bought some luggage with me," and it's top of the line. A lot of y'all not gonna play. He said, "I'm gonna leave it at that." So, with that being said, what what would be some things that you would leave the listeners with that were watching today? And it doesn't necessarily have to be pertaining to technology. It could be life. It could be whatever. What would be some things that you would want to, impart on them, before you get out of here?
I would say, don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to pivot. And just walk in your greatness. God has blessed us all with different talents, and don't be afraid to walk in your greatness. And I feel like in the digital space it's so easy to compare ourselves to others. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, like I want this, or like, this guy got this car, and not noticing like a lot of it is reality. And I would feel like excuse me, and I would just say don't be afraid to pivot. When I first got done with college, I was lost. You know what I mean? I was lost. I didn't know which direction to go. And I had to make a hard pivot, and I never looked back. There's some people who actually don't pivot. They're still at the field, 38 years old, 35 years old, 30 years old, 45, you name it. You got people still at the field still trying to make it to, that next level in which, at some point you have to pivot and notice that, man, there's a different direction. God wants more for me. You know what I mean? He has more in store for me, and really just transition into that different area. And I feel like, don't be afraid to walk your own path, and don't let anybody tell you any different. If you're passionate about this space, do everything you can to break into this space and continue growing. Continue being motivated and continue being disciplined at the same time.
All good words. All good words, man. And I just want to leave y'all with this one more time. Like I said, just slow down driving. If you go the speed limit, you'll get there in time. Or you can go no way, you can go 5 over. You can go a little fast. But if you go too fast, you're more prone to wrecks. And you're more prone to miss out on some things that you should have saw in your journey. That's what I want to leave y'all with. Because a lot of you guys aren't seeing some of the things that you should have seen. And so when you get there, you can't handle it at that time, and you go through some issues that you wouldn't have got into had you just slow down a little bit. So that's what I want to leave you guys with. But I appreciate y'all spending another episode of the Textual Talk podcast. Y'all really did good on the last episode. I need y'all to do good on this one as well. Share it out with people that need to hear it. Leave us a review. Send me an email. Sponsors, y'all already know what to do. Hit my email. But until next time, like I always say, let's stay textual. It's your boy HD, and we out.